We also have Keith Bennett. Keith is an active member of the International Manifesto Group and a consultant specializing in Chinese and Korean affairs. He's the deputy chair of the Kim Il-sung Kim Jong-il Foundation and the deputy secretary of the European Regional Society for the Study of the Juche Idea. He has closely followed events in Korea and the Korean road to socialism for nearly half a century, and first visited the DPRK in 1983 as a delegate to the World Conference of Journalists Against Imperialism. He has subsequently visited the country on some 50 occasions and was twice awarded the DPRK Order of Friendship by President Kim Il-sung. He's delivered papers on the Juche Idea and on Korean reunification at conferences in Europe, Asia, and Latin America.
Thank you, comrades, for the invitation to speak at this book launch. And I'd like to begin by thanking and paying tribute to Iskra Books for their initiative and work in making available this selection of Kim Il-sung's writings and speeches on education. Along with Leica Press, who are making available the 50 or so volumes of Kim Il-sung's works, you are performing a unique and extremely valuable service for the working class movement in the imperialist countries. Kim Il-sung is without doubt one of the very greatest leaders in the entire history of the world communist and working class movements, and both his works and his long history of struggle and leadership constitute a veritable encyclopedia and template of revolution. Firmly grounded and developed in Korean reality, they have relevance not only to Korea, not only to the oppressed nations and peoples, they also deal with countless questions that the working and oppressed people in the imperialist heartlands also need to grapple with and master if they are to make fundamental progress. Yet even compared to the other great communist leaders, the works of Kim Il-sung, along with those of the other great Korean communist leaders Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un, remain almost unknown and even a subject of disparagement, even among some of the better sections of the working class movement in our countries. Therefore, compared to what needs to be done, the magnitude of the tasks facing us, this publication may seem a modest start. But who would reasonably underestimate the importance of a small oasis in a vast expanse of desert? That oasis is a source of life. You are also inheriting and carrying forward the work done by a few in decades past. I think, for example, of the New York-based weekly Guardian newspaper's publication of the substantial volume of On Juche in Our Revolution, with an introduction by Eldridge Cleaver, reflecting the Black Panther Party's own not inconsiderable efforts to study and disseminate the Juche idea. This Guardian newspaper, needless to say, was no relation to the British newspaper of the same name. It was a very fine socialist newspaper. Here in London, works of Kim Il-sung were published by progressive publishing houses of the African diaspora, and the International Marxist Group once published a set of his interviews with foreign journalists after the Daily Mirror had refused to accept them as paid advertisements. In the 1980s, Mosquito Press, a political and publishing venture with which I was closely associated, published a number of works of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. Education, the topic you chose for your volume, is one of the great achievements of the Socialist Democratic People's Republic of Korea, something I have been privileged to witness in the course of my numerous visits over the last nearly 40 years, where I have been able to see something of the country's educational system at work, from nurseries and kindergartens through to Kim Il-sung University. Of course, this system, from the lowest to the highest levels, is also completely free, including in the provision of textbooks and uniforms, in strong contrast to both the United States and Britain. Today, the DPRK has 12-year universal compulsory education, one of the highest in the world. Having long since reached 11 years, it was increased to 12 years in 2012 on the proposal of Comrade Kim Jong-un. Interestingly, Comrade Kim Il-sung stresses on several occasions that education can only be meaningfully compulsory when it is free. But the picture was very different when Korea achieved its liberation from Japanese colonial rule in 1945. The country barely had a handful of graduates. Yet, in a situation where so many deeds cry out to be done, and always urgently, to take a line from Mao Zedong's poetry, where everything had to be started from scratch, Kim Il-sung ensured that the very first factory to be built was one to produce pencils, so as to effectively promote the literacy drive and the education of the rising generation. To give another telling example, the Workers' Party of Korea is unique among the parties of the international working class movement in that its symbol and flag feature not just the hammer and sickle, but also a writing brush to represent the intellectuals. The kind of disparagement or denigration of intellectuals that has occasionally featured in ultra-left detours in the great project of building socialism has never found a place in the DPRK. Rather, Kim Il-sung and the Workers' Party of Korea have advanced the dialectical formulation of both working classizing and intellectualizing the whole of society. It is on this basis that the DPRK has long advanced the ambition to progress towards universal compulsory higher education, with the main form to place emphasis on work-study programs as part of a move to eliminate the distinction between mental and physical labour. It is also this approach, incidentally, that enabled Kim Jong-il back in the 1980s to analyse that the increase in the number of intellectuals and those engaged in mental labour in the advanced capitalist countries did not mean that the ranks of the working people in those societies had decreased, but rather had actually increased. This dialectical approach, as little known as it is, has in many respects placed the DPRK in the forefront of the most advanced and progressive contemporary pedagogy, be it in terms of lifelong learning, distance learning, the combining of work and study, vocational education, after-school clubs, and other types of extracurricular and extramural activities, and so on. A great example is Kim Il-sung's insistence that every child should learn to play at least one musical instrument, master at least one foreign language, and excel in at least one sport. In all this, a great role is played in the after-school activities offered by the country's network of children's palaces. Of course, most socialist countries have set up similar facilities, but only in the DPRK do we find actual examples of veritable palaces befitting Kim Il-sung's oft-stated remark that children are the kings in our country. The Children's Palace in central Pyongyang was the tallest building in the capital city when it was built in 1958, marking the 10th anniversary of the founding of the DPRK. Of course, it has long since been eclipsed by numerous other buildings in the city, and not least by the Mangyongdae School Children's Palace, built at the foot of the newly built Kwangbok Street when Korea hosted the 13th World Festival of Youth and Students in 1989. It was here that President Kim Il-sung spent the New Year holiday enjoying the children's concert until the last year of his life. I visited this palace numerous times, and it offers literally hundreds of activities according to children's interests and aptitudes, from embroidery to taekwondo, from ballet to car mechanics, from table tennis to calligraphy, and yes, how to strip down and reassemble a submachine gun at speed. In a word, it offers the type and range of facilities and activities only available to the children of the rich in capitalist countries, but definitely with socialist characteristics. Another example of education for all is the Grand People's Study House, situated on Kim Il-sung Square and built on the occasion of the President's 70th birthday in April 1982. As a national library freely accessible to all working people and with millions of books, it also has its own large in-house academic staff to answer readers' and researchers' questions and help them with their work and interests. You might say it is easier to see a professor in Pyongyang than it is to see a doctor in London. I want to close with two brief quotations from Kim Il-sung's theses on socialist education, which really forms the centrepiece of the book we are discussing today. I've chosen the first for its refutation of the anti-communist and frankly racist trope that would have people believe that the Korean people are somehow brainwashed automatons subject to brutal diktat, rather than citizens of a people-centered socialist society dedicated to unleashing the creativity of every person so that they might be enabled to play their full part in the building of a new society. Kim Il-sung wrote, "In order to develop the students' ability to think, there should be a great deal of discussion and debate, and question and answer sessions should be conducted. The introduction of this method will enable the students to gain an extensive and profound understanding of what they are taught. The ideological education of students should be conducted through explanation and persuasion. It is only when the students themselves understand and accept communist ideology that it can become a firm belief. Therefore, ideological education should be neither coercive nor even crammed, but always conducted by explanation and persuasion so that the students understand and sympathise with advanced ideas of their own accord." My second and final quotation is chosen for two reasons. First, for its debunking of the calumny that the Korean Revolution is somehow based on narrow nationalism or even chauvinism, and secondly, because it is just simply inspiring. Students should be armed with proletarian internationalism. All our students should be educated to offer active support for the revolutionary struggle of the peoples of the world for peace, democracy, national independence and socialism, to strengthen friendship and solidarity with them, and to fight staunchly for victory in the world revolution. Thank you very much for your attention.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.